I have a parenting, mentorship, and caregiving conundrum for you all. And it's that good attachment practice in parenting will inevitably, I think, be in tension with the emotional pragmatism of radical or revolutionary politics. If you have learned to consistently respond sensitively and promptly to a child's emotional and physical needs to build a strong, secure parent child bond, congratulations. You have moved out of a long history of hierarchical, patriarchal, authoritarian parenting in which the child is a mini me who's trained to validate you and support the social order. If you've learned to mitigate your anxious or avoidant attachment, that is, the ways in which we compensate for a lack of security in relationships, congratulations. You have taken an inventory of your family, community, maybe church patterns, and you figured out how to not replicate the anxiety that passes for love or the avoidance that passes for stoicism. Now, ideally, this sets a kid up for good social trust hygiene, the capacity to recognize when relationships are grounded in reliability and commitment, and how they can be repaired when that reliability falters. Also, I think it should set the kid up to recognize and hopefully avoid the toxic whirlpools of insecure and disorganized attachment that govern cults. I used to have this wrong idea that if a person was genuinely committed to a spiritual practice, their politics would eventually line up with Marxism. Like, how could you meditate for years, for example, and not realize that capitalism is irredeemably flawed? Two words for you: Ezra Klein. It's just not true. Similarly, there is no definitive content to good attachment parenting. It's bipartisan. I don't think white nationalists or fascist families can develop good attachment, but I definitely think that conservative and liberal families do it, and they do it well all the time. In fact, in some ways, I suspect that solid liberal attachment parenting functions as an additional pacification technique against revolution. In other words, if your primary care relationships are really stable, you might default back to the comfort of family, experiencing it as a special respite from the contradictions of the world. In fact, that's part of what I think Scott Galloway is doing in Notes on Being a Man. He's making this clumsy Gen X argument for attachment being the only thing that makes the chaos of capitalism worthwhile. So you can check out my review of his book. Now, radical politics collides with this on two fronts. First, any ideology that says our material existence is defined by class conflict will present a vision of social relations that cannot ultimately be repaired. And if that conflict escalates through crisis and then erupts into fascism, you're going to be dealing with people who are very dangerous to negotiate relationships with. So immediately, any broader lesson about society taught by secure attachment is going to reach a hard limit, a place where we do cut people off. So the kid will have to somehow navigate the difference between social secureness and political conflict. Secondly, any attempt to guide a kid into a radical ideology will meet the paradox of domination. Like, how do you instill or model or provoke any values, even communistic or anarchistic values, without resorting to a top-down and disempowering approach? Emma Goldman flagged this paradox back at the turn of the century. She wrote that radical parents often still, quote, cling tenaciously to the notion that they own the child, unquote. And so they force their ideas upon kids, setting out to mold and form them according to their own conceptions of what's right. And this is fundamentally opposed to the revolutionary goal of fostering spontaneity of character and allowing the child to develop freely. So I don't have an answer to any of this any more than to the broader question I've been looking at of how anarchistic versus vanguardist notions of revolution conflict with each other. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Here's what I can say, however. My decade-plus long critique of wellness disciplines as being largely depoliticized techniques for pacifying workers has often overlapped with a similar view of the larger project of global North psychotherapy being liberal at its core. being meant to help people adjust to the contradictions of capitalism as opposed to confronting and changing them. But I'm starting to think of some attachment theory as also serving this project to the extent that it's depoliticized. You can have secure attachments and be a hyper-capitalist a-hole, and well, good for you, I guess. But now I'm also thinking that the extent to which attachment theory is essentially a strategy for emotional sustainability, it might implicitly encourage a kind of liberal reformist orientation to life. Like, let's not change things too fast. Let's come back to center. Let's adjust. Let's accommodate. Things are going to be all right. And meanwhile, it's unavoidable that radical politics will demand ruptures. So I think these are two very difficult paradigms to integrate. Like, it's good to come to secure attachment and the capacity for social repair, and it is good to know when you have to cut bait and fuck shit up, because the capitalists will kill you if they must, and the fascists will kill you because they want to. Attachment, breaking things, 6, 7,